My little itty-bitty bruiser buddies.
United States heavyweight champion from Brazil.
The world's heavyweight champion from the AWA, Nick Bockwinkel.
The Midwest supporting, bruiser loving, positivity spreading, world's most dangerous podcast. Join former pro wrestler and promoter Dave Dynasty as he supports and promotes Midwest pro wrestling. Keep on growing with the Midwest Express. This is the Dave Dynasty Show.
And welcome to the Dave Dynasty Show. I am your host, Dave Dynasty. Thank you for joining us by whatever means you do and whatever platform. We are glad you are here. And we have a special guest, a special co-host with the Minnesota Wrestling Hall of Fame, Carol Castle. Carol, how are you?
I'm doing well, Dave.
Good, good. Well, talk to us a little bit about the Minnesota Wrestling Hall of Fame. Tell me how that got started and the kinds of things you do and support.
Well, the Minnesota Wrestling Hall of Fame got started right after Vern Gagne died. And we started, I believe it was August 17th, 2015. Things we support are all about wrestling, Minnesota wrestling, amateur and professional. We want to preserve the stories, we want to preserve the history, and honor the men and women that make wrestling so great. And one of the things that in my research that I found that Robbinsdale, Minnesota, is the birthplace of Minnesota wrestling. And so we were lucky enough to be housed in the History Museum in Robbinsdale, Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota obviously has a very long, very rich history of wrestling, even predating the AWA. But, of course, the AWA is what most people think of when they think professional wrestling in Minnesota. Tell us about your background with wrestling and as a fan. When did you start watching it, and what really hooked you on this sport?
Oh, what hooked me was my Uncle Jim and my father would take me as a little kid to the Minneapolis Auditorium, and it was Vern Gagne, it was the Crusher, and it was Harley Race, it was Larry Hennig, it was Pretty Boy Larry Hennig and Handsome Harley Race, it was Dr. X. It was just going to a large auditorium with everybody there, the energy walking in, sitting down in the chairs, the popcorn, just everybody's there for a common purpose to watch wrestling. There was something so communal about it and primal, yet it was such a family thing for us to do. We went on just the regular matches whenever they would buy tickets. I started going when I was like 3, but for us, every Christmas, Thanksgiving, we'd have dinner, and then we would go to the matches, or Easter. That's how we celebrated holidays. After we did the family stuff, wherever the matches were, the whole family went.
Yeah,
that's what we did, and that's what our neighborhood basically did. That's what we did. That's how I grew up, and that's how it got started. So I actually started with professional wrestling, and then kind of morphed back into amateur wrestling. My uncle was Golden Gloves boxer, and so I was really kind of up on amateur boxing growing up also. So I kind of went backwards into amateur wrestling. Just, with him, he knew a lot of the wrestlers, amateur and professional. So I kind of got to know afterwards the people he knew and worked out with. But that's kind of how it all got started, for me.
Yeah, that's one thing. One of the biggest changes to me that pro wrestling has experienced, and the thing that's lost is it used to very much, like you said, have a sense of community about it. It was typically, when you had the territories, each area had their promotion, and you typically had somewhere within your area at least a weekly show, typically. And like you said, people would go, and I know, for me, when I went to the local shows, I went, I saw Bruiser his promotion a lot here in the area, and even watching it on TV every week. That was my escape. All right, I didn't have to think about school. I didn't have to think about family. I didn't have to think about whoever had got on my nerves that week or whatever else. That was my time that I just forgot everything, forgot the world, and got lost in it. And that's, I don't know, to me that's the biggest element that I don't think pro wrestling has as much anymore. Is that like you said, the communal, the community feel of it.
And not only the communal feel, but I never missed it growing up.
Yeah.
I never missed it, not 1 week. The loyalty. I was very loyal to Vern Gagne and the Crusher.
Yeah.
And I do not know to this day, and I should ask George Schire. He's wonderful to talk to history.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how or why I got the idea that Larry Hennig and Harley Race double-crossed Vern Gagne. But I remember having ulcers as a kid, and that was the reason.
Yeah.
And I remember being at the doctor's office, and the doctor's talking to my mom, and she's crying, and she can't figure out why this little kid's got ulcers. And I'm trying to explain. I go, what do you mean he double-crossed Vern Gagne? And I'm going into this whole tirade. He double-crossed and he trained him. And she doesn't understand, and she hates wrestling, and she hates people getting hit. And the doctor doesn't understand, and I'm a little kid. And I had ulcers for years, and it was because of pretty boy Larry Hennig double-crossing Vern Gagne.
Yeah. And
it was real to me. But it was so real, I took it out internally as a kid, and that realness stuck with me.
Yeah.
All through high school, I mean, even now, those matches I can recall. I just seen a friend of mine from grade school, Bill Savoda. We would go to the auditorium matches and come home, and we would each pick heel or face, and we would recreate those matches. I was usually Judge Crusher Carroll, and he'd be Dr. X, and blow for blow or move for move, we would recreate that match on the front lawn.
Yeah.
And we'd move on to the second match. That's just what we did in our neighborhood, and it's either us or somebody else down the block. That's just how we were growing up. Besides playing baseball and hockey and football and everything else, that was just part of who we were growing up. It was as real as reading the box scores of the Twins.
Yep, sure was. And do you remember who was the first wrestler that you actually met, that you actually had some interaction with going to the shows? Do you remember?
I remember my dad brought home or had Mr. M come to the house.
Oh, wow.
But he didn't have a mask on. And he was dressed in regular trousers. And so, to me, he was just a guy.
Yeah.
And he had a picture, and I opened the door, and I was sliding, and my dad was, who this is? No. Bill Miller. And I said, hi. And he's a wrestler. And I said, okay. And he gives me a picture, and he goes, do you want me to sign that for you? I said, no. and he goes, well, why not? He goes, well, I don't want you to wreck my picture, because the picture was somebody wrestling, and this guy is in slacks, and he did everything he could to convince me that was who he was. So
yeah.
That was the first one I had interaction with where I just totally made my parents furious. Like, Carol, do you know who this is? And it didn't matter to me. He should have been wearing his wrestling gear, as far as I was concerned. But that was like the first one. The Crusher, Red Bastine, Kind. We used to wait at Minneapolis Auditorium afterwards when they'd walk out, and they always were just kind to us, just nice. Hey, kid, what are you doing out so late?
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. Do you remember? Oops, sorry. Go ahead.
Afterwards.
Yeah. Do you remember the first wrestling you saw outside of your area, be it on TV or maybe later on a tape or anything? What was your first taste you got outside of that Minnesota and that AWA country stuff?
I didn't see anything outside my area. I seen a Bruno Sammartino magazine. He was on the cover.
Yeah.
And I don't even know where I seen it, but I was probably 13 or 14 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, oh, well, what do you mean Mergania's not on the cover? You know, or Nick Fox was not on the cover. It just, you know, and then it was like, okay, you got to realize it's a big country. But, yeah, you hear about the territories, but it was kind of a shock to me that our guys weren't all over the magazine. And I think it was at like a drugstore or something where I had seen it.
Yeah.
And I picked it up. Or I don't know, wherever I seen it, I picked it up. And it wasn't right local in the cities here, but it wasn't too far away.
Yeah.
But it surprised me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, everybody that I've ever known they're always partial, you know, to what their home home promotion was. Like I said, I live in this unique spot where on TV I would get Bruiser out of Indianapolis, but I was also close enough that I could get the Memphis show out of Louisville, off the Louisville station. We picked it up. But I enjoyed both, but they seemed so different because Memphis took place in a studio wrestling, so it seemed, I don't know, it seemed more smaller scale to me, even though I enjoyed it, than Bruiser, because Bruiser had these big, he was showing the arena shows and arena matches on his, so, and I was partial to Dick the Bruiser, so I liked Memphis, but it couldn't, take place in my heart like Bruiser and WWA could, so.
I love Dick the Bruiser and the Crusher. They were just magical to me.
Yeah.
They were just magical. I've been talking to the Crusher's daughters, and I truly believe the Crusher was loved in Minnesota probably more so than Wisconsin, and I really want to do something to highlight his career here through the Hall of Fame, and it's just something I've been kind of working on. Hopefully we'll get that done. I want to get it done this year, but we're kind of running out of months, but hopefully soon.
Yeah, so what kind of events do you guys do with the Hall of Fame? I mean, I've seen online the recognition for different stars and different wrestlers. What event-wise, tell us some of what you do throughout the year.
Well, we do the legendary series of talks where we'll have someone like George Schire will come in and talk about different parts of the history of wrestling. He's an author, wonderful author of different books. We've had Jim Brunzell come in and talk. We'll have one thing we do for the Minnesota Wrestling Hall of Fame is I'm trying to increase the footprint of wrestling itself. And not everyone likes smash 'em up wrestling. There are people that I'm trying to reach wrestling in a different way. We have Wrestling with the Arts, which is our art show, which can incorporate different styles of art, and they just have to be either related to a wrestler or be from Minnesota or know a Minnesota wrestler. And it's pretty successful this year. It was our first one ever in August, and we're having our next one in January already in Robin Gallery, so that should be kind of fun.
Yeah.
We do something that for Crescent Cove Children's Hospice. We collect bikes, trikes, big wheels, and wagons for the kids and the families at Crescent Cove Children's Hospice. And it's called Wheels of Love, and it's something we've done from the very start. Yeah. I supplied Santa Claus for their events. Even before they had a building, we've helped pair up with Olive Garden, with the Sharing Tree. Whatever Katie Lindenfelder needs for Crescent Cove and their kids. Randy Bright, my partner with this, has dressed up as Santa and delivered gifts throughout the state. I have wrestling ambassadors, that will deliver bikes to kids in different states. And then the wrestlers will hook it up with the kids and take pictures. A lot of the kids that are in the hospice program still are either able to ride bikes or their families are. Sometimes they get a diagnosis and they're up here in Minnesota getting treatment, or the family comes up to be with the child that's getting treatment. They have nothing of their own, and they're living with a host family. Yeah. And that's why it's called Wheels of Love, because a bike is freedom. It always has been and always will be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, it's so cool. All of a sudden, I'll come home and somebody will, like Walmart.com, a biker wagon to my house. It's neat.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be able to help Crescent Coast Children's Hospice that way.
Right.
It's, this Saturday, the Minnesota Wrestling Hall of Fame supplying Santa and a photographer for Saving Shepherds of Minnesota. Just one of the charities I like working with that know that German Shepherds get a bad rap. They're wonderful animals, wonderful dogs, and we're supplying that. So it's a fundraiser for them so that people can bring their animal, any kind of animal that's on a leash and well-behaved, can come in and get their picture taken with their animal and Santa. And we're just trying to get our name out there do things for the community.
Yeah. Yeah, so
we've done movies. We've done Dropkick Minnesota. We've had movie premieres.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Larry Hennig earlier, and we've got an interview coming up this episode with Larry. So talk to us about, you've become very close with Larry. Talk to us about how you've got to know him and meet him and what he's meant to you and to the Hall of Fame and to Minnesota wrestling in general over the years.
I love Larry. I can't possibly tell you how cool he is. He does more for wrestling, promoting the kindness and the togetherness that wrestlers feel. And this is whether it's professional, independent, or amateur. He does more for the sport than just about anybody I've ever met. He goes to the amateur meet. He's been involved in wrestling in the state for, he won his state title, I believe, in 1956.
Yeah.
He was first state champion for Robbinsdale High School. He's been involved ever since, with his kids, his grandkids, and now he's got at least 3 great grandkids that wrestle. He's at tournaments, watching the community, all their kids amateur wrestling. He's wonderful. He likes doing the meet and greet, meeting the people. I was with him on Broadway in Robbinsdale, where people come out and he's kissing babies and shaking hands, and this kind of leads up to the event that we're having. The owner of Wicked Wort Brewery comes by, and he's a big biker. Mm-hmm. He is a biker. He's the kind that you see him walking up, and you're going to check your purse and grab your wallet and just kind of if your back's against the wall because you don't know if he's one of the mean kind or nice. You don't know.
Yeah.
He's a big, imposing guy. And it's like, here's this guy, and he looks at me, and he goes, is that really the axe? I go, yep. And he starts getting tongue-tied. And it was neat. And there's other people in front of him talking to Larry, and everyone gets their time. And it was so neat to watch somebody that honors a true legend in this business, and he does. Mm-hmm. He loves wrestling. He loved Larry wrestling. He loved Larry now. And as we were talking, and he was getting his autograph on a picture, and it's on the wall in the brewery, we talked about all the legends, and the Hall of Fame's literally a block away from his establishment. And we started talking about doing the Hall of Fame series of beers. I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, we'll never run out of wrestlers from Minnesota. And if we do, we still got plenty. We got the Dr. X needs to have his. Jesse Ventura obviously needs to have one. We have plenty of wrestlers. There's plenty of beers we need to go around. And I just said, we need to have one for Larry. I said, we need to start with the axe, move on to Pretty Boy. I said, I'm sure we can find 3 or 4 others just for Larry. He's always involved with Robbinsdale. And as we were sitting there at the table and they're talking, and he just said, we'll talk. And Steve Carlisle is the owner, the big bike dude. He's a man of his word. He got a hold of me right away, and we met within 3 days, and it's like, it's like, okay, it's like, if anyone gives me an idea, I'm going to run with it. Always have. And Larry's like that too. You say anything to Larry, okay, let's do it. And Steve's like that, so it works really well. That three of us got together on this, and the 17th is the big uncorking, I guess that's how you say it. And we got a big event between 3 and 7. The beer's called The Axe is Back. And personally, he's never been gone. But if you look across the highway, there's a building, and they painted over it. But if you look close, there's about 4 feet long. Somebody has spray painted The Axe is Back about 30 years ago. It's still there. And that's just like a little trivia in Robbinsdale. But they're doing a mural this spring. And they're actually adding, they're just going to do like Nice City Life and blah, blah, blah. But now they're adding 2 wrestlers, which they have to. Yeah. You know, I think it's wonderful. And I personally think they have to be wrestling worthy, and that's Vern Gagne and Larry Hennig.
Yep, right.
You know, the 2 most famous amateur and professional wrestlers out of Robbinsdale.
Yep.
So that's kind of like how this event kind of became. Steve Carlisle's a wrestling fan. We kind of hope to turn it into like a little Hall of Fame. They have a wonderful gathering area downstairs, and I think it's going to be perfect to do small movies. I think they have a movie night there now. We have a couple good documentary producers, and I think we can start running some wrestling movies down there. That'd be a lot of fun for people, and they're a great brewery.
Yeah, you said that was November 17th. They're in Robbinsdale. So tell us, there's an event page on Facebook, right? Tell us how people can find out more information about the times and location and stuff for that event.
Well, you can go to my website, MinnesotaWrestlingHallOfFame.com, or you can just find me on Facebook, the Minnesota Wrestling Hall of Fame on Facebook, or Carol Castle on Facebook. Or we're on Twitter, too, and I'll try to be better about sharing things. Feel free to message me or message Dave. He's a lot better about it than I am.
Yeah.
And we got to get him there. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have the mayor there. We have the greatest mayor. Reagan Murphy has been so supportive of the Minnesota Wrestling Hall of Fame. He's going to be there with the proclamation for Larry Hennig. And this is kind of a surprise to him. He hasn't been told this yet.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that the governor has his proclamation declaring it Larry Hennig Day. I hope that's done in time for that, too. So I hope that gets read.
Yeah.
So we hope to make it very special for Larry the Axe Hennig Day.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. It's remarkable to me that guys like Larry, how huge they were and how much of an impact they had on the sport, and so many fans may not even know who he is. And it was funny because when I recorded the interview with Larry, it cracked me up because he ended it by singing to me. He sung me a song at the end, and then told me kind of almost abruptly that he had to go because he had to watch his grandson on Raw. So he had to go see Curtis Axel wrestle. But it was so funny. He actually, I think it's the first time on my show that I've ever been serenaded by Larry the Axe Hennig of all people. So. And
Larry's in Ford Hall of Fame.
Yeah, right.
And he is a legend, and he's a legend that believes in the business. He takes the time for, it doesn't matter who you are. If you come up to him, he's going to shake your hand. He's going to talk to you. Loves taking pictures with people, and he likes talking wrestling. He wants to know what your memories are of him. I still have all my wrestling magazines that I used to buy, at the drugstore when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. He was a big part of me growing up, and I think doing the Hall of Fame for me, it's just preserving my life is kind of boring, but I think preserving my history, the good part of my history has always been the wrestling. Yep. And I think that's the right thing to do. with people dying, you know, all of our sport history. I've always read baseball and football history, hockey history. That all dies, you know, with people dying. You know, people don't remember. And I think the more we have these museums, the Dan Cable Museum, the better off our world is.
Yep.
So we can reflect back and find out what these people really did. I don't remember everything I've seen and watched. I wish I did remember more. But I sure like going back and reading the magazine I haven't seen for 30, 40 years, and I still read them cover to cover, even if I haven't seen them for a while. And I think it's great for our communities to have these places for people to go and talk wrestling with other fans and learn about people like Larry and his son Kurt and Curtis Axel and the Hennig legacy.
Yep, absolutely.
He's a big deal to Minnesota.
Yep, absolutely.
He's a big deal to me.
Yep. Well, and thank you, Carol, for doing your part in that, and your part with the Minnesota Wrestling Hall of Fame. It's a great, great thing. Something that I'm very glad to be supportive of. Like you said, I'm all for more of these, more recognition. Not just in Minnesota, but around the world, around the country. I mean, like we said, every territory has it. They have their stars, and their stories need to be preserved and be told before they're lost. There's only so far that word of mouth will go before it starts to fade away. So, yeah, you're right. It's very important to preserve these legacies. So, again, everybody look her up on Facebook. They have a page, or you can look up Carol Castle. They also have a website. And while you're there, make sure you check out that event on November 17th in Robbinsdale, Minnesota. If you're in the area or can be in the area, make sure you go and tell the Axe how much you appreciate him and everything he's done, and have a beer. Drink one. Drink one from me. So, Carol, thank you for coming on and sharing and telling us about these things and your memories of wrestling and Larry and everything you're doing with the Minnesota Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Oh, thank you so much, David. It's been my pleasure.
Yep, and we're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we will have that interview with Larry the Axe Hennig, so stick around. If you are looking for the best books, DVDs, and posters on classic wrestling nostalgia, then you want to visit crowbarpress.com. There are literally dozens of titles there, including biographies of the likes of Bruiser Brody, Ole Anderson, Ivan Koloff, and of course, Dick the Bruiser, as we've spoke about here on the Dave Dynasty Show. You want to visit crowbarpress.com for all of your classic wrestling nostalgia needs. Again, that is crowbarpress.com. And welcome back to the Dave Dynasty Show. I am Dave Dynasty, and I'm joined today by an outstanding guest, a multi-Hall of Famer, the legendary Larry the Axe Hennig. Mr. Hennig, how are you?
I'm just fine. I'm great, as a matter of fact.
Well, that's good.
The older I get, the better I get.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good. Not a lot of people get to say that, do they? Well, we're going to talk a little bit today about your career, Mr. Hennig. Talk about when you broke in. It was in the early 60s, correct? And did you train with Vern Gagne there in Minneapolis?
Well, I trained with a couple guys. As a matter of fact, three guys. Joe Pazendak, who was a super wrestling heavyweight, Vern Gagne, and Billy Robinson. So I actually had three trainers.
Okay, and you worked a little bit there for Vern, and then but then pretty early on you went to Texas. What sparked the move to Texas for you there early on in your career?
Well, it was the money. When you wrestle professionally, you got to follow the money.
Right. Okay.
And that's exactly what I did.
Okay.
And I still had to maintain working out, training, and keep myself in good shape so I could live longer, so I could do interviews like this.
Yeah, well, that's right. Good. So when you went to Texas, did you feel that Texas style, that kind of that brawling, that brutal style, that kind of helped shape who you became as a wrestler and the style that you became known for?
They had a lot of good wrestlers out of Texas. The Funk Brothers, the Back to Dad, and then the two sons, Cherry, and it was good. It kept me busy, And on top of all that, it was, at that time I didn't know that, but it was really grooming me for bigger and better things.
Yeah, and that's also where you met Harley Race, wasn't it? How did you meet Harley? Tell us about meeting Harley there in Texas.
We just passed in the night when we were down there. He was younger than I was, and we had talked about it, and we were hoping that the opportunity came about. And I was up wrestling on TV at the old Calhoun Beach Hotel, and he came up to wrestle on TV, and we got to talking, and we got along real well, and I liked his style, so I jumped right on it. We got together and won the World Tag Team Championship and traveled the world, Australia, Japan 28 times. We went everywhere together. Europe. It was a friendship and a business together, and today we're still friends.
Yeah.
We talk once in a while. His health is not too good right now, but we talk now and then.
Yeah. Well, and one of the teams, one of the famous rivalries that you guys were known for was you guys against Dick the Bruiser and Crusher. So tell us about working with Bruiser and Crusher and those matches that you guys had, particularly over the World Tag Titles there.
Well, they're in great conditioning, both great athletes, and they came from the Chicago and Milwaukee area, and they were just tough, rugged type guys. And that's the same way that they wrestled.
Yeah.
We wrestled sold out, I don't know how many times, the amphitheater in Chicago, and Milwaukee, and Winnipeg, and I could go on and on. But they were good for us, and in the long run, we made a lot of money with them.
Yeah. So tell us, after a few years, just early on there, you suffered a pretty severe knee injury. Tell us about that happening. It was in Winnipeg, wasn't it?
Yeah, Winnipeg. That's what broke up our team. It was 2 years before I got back, and then Harley kept rolling. And during that time, Harley had become 3 or 4 times world champion. After he broke up, and then we got together after that. We went to Australia and Japan and other places.
Yeah, well, tell us this story of when you hurt your knee, and then you take the car ride back from Winnipeg back to Minneapolis before you went to the hospital.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to go to the hospital in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
So Harley drove me back, cold winter night. And they checked me in the hospital, Northwestern Hospital. And the next day, they told me how bad it was. And then Wally Carbo and Gagne came to the hospital. I said, well, you're going to Chicago. I said, I can't go anywhere. The guy next to me in the room, he said, well, you got to make an appearance. So they got me out of the hospital, got on an airplane, flew to Chicago. I didn't wrestle, but I walked down to the ring and kind of moped around there, and at least I made an appearance. The guy said, you're going where? I said, I'm going to Chicago to wrestle. But it was bad. It lasted a long time.
Yeah, and you and Harley teamed for a little bit, and then you kind of went your separate ways, and you were teaming with different guys, Lars Anderson, and you teamed for a while with Dusty Rhodes and different things, and then eventually you came back to Minneapolis, and suddenly the fans were behind you, right? You kind of came to the rescue of Jim Renzel and Greg Agnew. What was it like for kind of the first time really in your career there to have kind of the fans cheering for you and behind you? How did that feel for you?
Well, it was great, and as a matter of fact, on the Robbinsdale High School, on that big wall there, in the high school, someone wrote on there, the axe is back.
Oh, yeah.
With, you could see it for miles.
Yeah. Yeah. You had, you fit in well with the AWA style because you had an amateur background. Did you and Vern click and get along well? Because Vern always liked, those guys with the amateur background.
Vern was 10 years older than I was, so we never wrestled as amateurs, but I was a state champion. My sophomore year, the first year I went out for wrestling, I took third in the state, and my senior year, I was a state champion heavyweight.
Yeah.
In fact, John Gagalko, my wrestling coach, I was his first state champion. So to this day, John and I, who was a great coach at Robbinsdale, Augsburg, and other colleges, we're still great friends.
Yeah, and and you actually earned a scholarship to what was it, University of Minnesota, and got to wrestle a little bit there, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty spectacular. Yeah, I know Vern likes those amateur guys. He likes the guys with the actual amateur background. What was it like? Talk to us. You talked about Billy Robinson helped train you, and he's kind of known as that. He's got that English catch style and stuff about it. Tell us about Billy Robinson and working with him and how tough he was.
Well, he came from England, of course, you know that. But as an amateur and collegiate wrestler and Olympic wrestler, he was one of the best in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's how he got here, because of that's the caliber of wrestlers that Wally Carbo and Vern Gagne wanted.
Yeah.
Were people with wrestling backgrounds. And so it worked out real well for him.
Yeah. And then, not long after there, as we got into the 80s, obviously your son Kurt started wrestling, and it started becoming a big star, and you actually got to team with Kurt for a while and actually won the Pacific Northwest tag titles. What did that mean for you? I mean, that was right there at the end of your career, but how did that feel for you to get to team with your son and actually even capture tag titles with him?
Well, most everybody can relate to that has a son.
Yeah.
Right now, we have 5 children.
Uh-huh.
We have 28 grand and great grandchildren.
Wow.
24 more boys.
Wow.
And we get quite a nest over here. And we spend our time now. We got daughters that go, one's over in Wisconsin, and the other one's in Nebraska. And they're very good volleyball players.
Oh, yeah.
And we have a lot of other wrestlers coming along the way. So we're kind of a sports acclimated family.
Yeah, of course. And of course you're Curtis Axel, you're Joe, your son, they're wrestling in WWE now and having a lot of success there. Do you watch him much on TV and watch his stuff, or how often do you hear from him?
Right now, he's on at 7 o'clock. He'll be on tonight on
that's right.
On wrestling.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He's been with him 8-9 years now.
Yeah, right.
And he's doing real well with them.
Yeah.
He's making money. That's the bottom line.
That's right. That's what it's all about, isn't it?
Got 3 boys, and he lives up in the Anoka area there.
Yeah.
So we're happy.
Yeah.
Well, the main thing is, though, that we're all healthy people.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
And we work hard, and I'm really blessed with a great family.
Absolutely.
And great grandkids. So we're happy people here.
Yeah.
Today is our 63rd wedding anniversary today.
Really? Well, happy anniversary. That's awesome. That's amazing. And you guys, you and your wife, you own a real estate company, right? Then you've had that for a long, long time. I mean, you even owned that while you were wrestling, didn't you?
Yeah, I at that time I didn't know how long I was going to last, so I had to have somewhere to go, And so I got my real estate license in 57.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah,
so I've been around a while.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, that's something to be said for the experience there, right? I mean, so tell us, you also something that maybe not a lot of people even realize about you, that you actually worked up in New York and wrestled Bruno Sammartino for the WWF title. What was it like wrestling Bruno when he was the champ and at the height of his popularity?
Oh, that was big. I flew the family out there. We wrestled in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that Mexican guy who was Pedro Morales.
Pedro Morales, yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah, so he was another one out there on the coast. It was very big.
Yeah.
But I wrestled in Boston Garden and Madison Square Garden and all the bigger towns out east there, and that was quite a thrill for me. In fact, that's where I got the name The Axe. I hit a guy so hard in the head, and obviously it looked like he got hit by an axe. Well, that's what happened. That's where it started.
Yeah. So what did you think of working for Vince McMahon Sr.? What was he like?
I have to tell you that he was just starting. I wrestled for Vince's dad.
Right.
And whatever they told you in promotion, very rare they did. They kept their word financially. Kept their word for important matches. Made sure that I had a place to train. It was a nice romance, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, that's good. And you've been in multiple. You're in multiple Hall of Fames now. You're in the Luthez Hall of Fame. You're in multiple Hall of Fames. I mean, I don't even know how many different Hall of Fames you've been inducted in. I'm
in 4 Hall of Fames.
4 Hall of Fames. Yeah. What does it mean for you at this stage of your career or your life for people to remember you and what you accomplished, and when those honors come up? How does that make you feel to know that all these years later people still remember Larry the Axe Hennig and what he did?
Well, I don't know how many 4 Hall of Fame athletes there are in the world.
Yeah.
But I know I'm one of very few, and I was put there not only by the promoters but by wrestlers.
Sure. Yeah.
And they appreciated more than Wally Carbo and Vern Gagne did here. But I'm just saying that it's a great thrill. How many people are in the 4 Halls of Fame for one sport?
Yeah, not
wow.
That's right, not very many. Well, when I talked to Carol Castle, set this up, she told me that I needed to ask you about the Winter Carnival. I'm not real familiar with what the Winter Carnival is, since I'm not from that part of the U.S., but she said that you were very important in bringing the Winter Carnival from Winnipeg to St. Paul. Tell me that story and what that is.
Well, I was into snowmobile racing.
Yeah. Okay.
And they started they were going to do they tried to figure out some way to get the Winter Carnival started. So they thought if they had a race between Winnipeg and St. Paul, and when they left 500 miles, by the time you got to St. Paul, there'd be enough publicity and all that would help,
Mm-hmm.
And so I run the race. I run it 2 years. I took 22nd the first year and 11th the second year. But you got to remember that I weighed as much as a machine.
That's right. Yeah.
And I run into a chicken coop, run over a Volkswagen. It was quite a deal. Yeah. But I did make it, and I finished, and now I got. And it was really cold. Yeah. It was below 0 all the way. And my wife had brought a camera along to follow me, and the camera froze up.
Well,
so tell me how cold it.
Oh, tell me about this picture I've seen of you. Where it looks like you clean and jerked a snowmobile. Tell me about that. Was that part of that, or?
Well, that all started out as a bet. They said I couldn't do it.
Uh-huh.
And the Polaris people said I couldn't do it.
Oh, okay, Polaris. Okay.
But I did it.
Yeah?
I did it. And
what'd you win? Did you win the snowmobile?
They gave me a snowmobile.
Gave you the snowmobile, okay. Well, of course.
So there I was.
Had to be good publicity for them.
And it was a nice story, and until I went up deer hunting, and I went through the ice, and me and the snowmobile both were under the water.
Oh, no. So that's funny. Oh.
But, who would think 64 years ago that I would be graduated from Robbinsdale, and I'm returning to Robbinsdale to the Wicked Wort.
Yeah. Yeah. So...
And the fellow that owns that, Steve Carlisle, is quite a guy, quite a promoter.
Uh-huh.
And, they have their own brewery there.
Yeah, I hear they're naming a beer after you.
And I'm thrilled to come back, and it's going to be quite a deal there. He's got a lot of stuff, a lot of people, a lot of athletes coming, a lot of wrestlers coming, a lot of other friends. Steve has put together the owner. He is the owner of the Wicked Wort.
Uh-huh.
And on November 17th, from 3 to 7, that's a Saturday. So if you're not doing anything, get down there, because it's going to be a fun day.
Yeah, that's right. And
do you know what the name of the beer is?
No, what's the name of the beer?
The Axe is Back.
The Axe is Back. Well, I do like beer, so I can only imagine. It had to be a pretty strong beer, right? I mean, to be named after the Axe.
Yeah, we were there, and I'm trying to pick out a beer that everybody will like. That's kind of hard to do, but
yeah.
Anyway, that's from 3 to 7 on Saturday, November 17th.
Yeah. Okay, November 17th.
At the Wicked Wort in Robbinsdale.
Yeah, sounds like a good time.
Oh, it'll be a great time.
Yeah.
Dave, what's a little of your background? Where do you come from?
Well, I'm born and raised in Indiana, so I'm in the heart of Dick the Bruiser country, and lived here all my life. Yeah, so I grew up watching the AWA. Had it on TV here, and saw you and Kurt and all those guys, through the 70s and 80s, watching them. So. Yeah, you guys played a big part in my childhood, watching you guys on TV.
Well, then you know about Bruiser and Wilbur Snyder and all that group. Then
yep.
They're from Indiana originally. So
yep, absolutely. That was the wrestling I grew up on. The Bruiser up there in the WWA, running out of Indianapolis and stuff. And he'd come here. I'm actually from Columbus, Indiana, kind of a mid-sized town, and he'd come here about 2 or 3 times a year and run a show. So it was always exciting. But yeah, Bruiser's still the big hero around here, even today. He's still a big name.
Who would have thought all those years ago that we one from Indiana and Minnesota here, and we're talking about a place called the Wicked Wort.
I know.
And getting a beer with your name on it.
Yeah.
Who'd ever thought it?
Yeah. It's quite a world we live in now, isn't it? Well, I'm telling you, if you told me years ago that I'd ever be talking to Larry the Axe Hennig, I would have thought you're crazy. So I'm just honored just to be talking to you, just to begin with. So, well, Larry, we appreciate you coming on and talking to us. We won't keep you any longer. Just want to make sure everybody does remember November 17th there at the Wicked Wort. We'll put that information out there for all the guys that listen to our stuff, so they know all about that. Go out and see Larry, try his beer, and meet everybody else there. So, Mr. Hennig, we appreciate you coming on and talking to us. It's been truly an honor to talk to you this evening.
Well, let me ask you, where are you guys located at?
We're in Indiana, Columbus, Indiana.
Okay, you're calling from there.
Yep. Calling from Columbus, Indiana. Yep.
Well, good for you. Yes, sir. I went to Indiana before there was a 4-lane highway.
Yeah, really? Yeah, well, there's always so much road construction here that most of the highways are down about single lane anymore anyway. It's never ending around here. They're always working on the roads.
I see. Well, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I just want to let you know again, maybe this Robbinsdale people won't have a hard time finding it, but it's November 17th from 3 to 7 on a Saturday, and the name of the beer is The Axe is Back.
That's right.
Beer. and I'm trying to get my granddaughter, who's a good artist, to. They're working on the label for us, so.
Well, good deal.
We're going to have our own label too. So
yeah, good. So hopefully we'll see that out there on the internet. Some pictures of that when that's designed and stuff. So yeah, sounds exciting. On November 17th, go out and try Mr. Hennig's beer. The Axe is back.
There's going to be a lot of amateur wrestlers there. Steve St. Cloud State there. He won the national championship 2 years in a row wrestling.
Yeah.
And so
yeah,
we're going to have a lot of good people there, and it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of fun.
And I may even sing a song. I've been doing some singing lately.
Yeah.
Well, the people don't know. There's not as big as demand as I thought there'd be. But
what song do you sing? What's your song?
I do Country Western. I sing a little bit for you here.
Yeah, go for it.
Old cowpoke went riding out one dark and windy day. Upon a ridge he rested as he went along his way. Oh, and all at once a mighty herd of red-eyed cows he saw, plowing through the ragged sky and up a cloudy draw. Yippee-yi-oh, yippee-yi-yay, ghost riders in the sky.
That is outstanding.
That's all you're getting right now.
That's it. That's a preview. You got to come November 17th to hear more. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have to go pretty quick here. Lawrence Welk's going to be on. I watched Lawrence Welk.
All right. Well, we'll let you go then, Mr. Hennig. Thank you for talking to us tonight.
Hey, thanks, you guys, and good luck to you guys. You did a good job.
Thank you. Have a good night, sir. You've heard him here on the Dave Dynasty Show as a guest and as host of the monthly Graham's Gallery episodes. And now you can hear his stories. You can own a copy of Confessions of a Big-Time Wrestler, the audio book from Dr. Jerry Graham Jr., former multi-tag team champion in WWA and owner of Bruiser Bedlam. You can hear all of his encounters with the various wrestlers, places, and promotions he's worked as he tells about his colorful, long, and illustrious career. You can have your own copy for only $25, and that includes shipping and handling. It's very simple. Go on Facebook, look up Jerry Jaffe, Jaffe, send him a private message, and make arrangements to purchase a copy of Confessions of a Big-Time Wrestler now. You will not regret this purchase. And now we have George Schire on, longtime Minnesota pro wrestling historian and author. And well, George, now tell us about, let's talk about Larry Hennig for a moment. Tell us about how important Larry Hennig is to Minnesota wrestling and, of course, in the AWA, even back to his amateur days in high school.
Well, Larry Hennig, first of all, I've been very fortunate through the years to be able to call him friend, too. And he's just absolutely one of the most humble and nice guys outside the ring. Never like the character that I saw him as a kid when he was a hated villain. Mm-hmm. He was a heel. You know, in those days he dubbed himself Pretty Boy Larry Hennig.
Right.
And he would do a little strutting around with Handsome Harley Race. And, you know, whatever he could do to make the fans dislike him, and it worked. And that was the key. He drew well. Part of it was because of the Robbinsdale, Minnesota connection, because that's where a guy named Vern Gagne came out of, Robbinsdale, Minnesota.
Yeah.
And Vern was 10 years older than Larry. So Vern Gagne, you know, it's just natural that when the two of them came out of Robbinsdale and Larry got into professional wrestling, he had actually accepted a scholarship for football to the University of Minnesota.
Right.
And he wasn't able to go to follow through on that because Larry started a family at the age of 19 and got married.
Yeah.
And had a few other kids after that. And Larry is very, very much a family man. I can't tell you how much his family means to him.
Yeah.
And he's still married today to his beautiful wife, Irene, who is just a sweetheart.
Yeah.
And so it was always important for him to be a local wrestler because in those days, in the territory days, any wrestler who didn't like the promotion that they were in, they could pack their bags and go to another promotion. And if they didn't like that one, they could pack their bags and go to a different promotion.
Sure.
But today, you know, this is bouncing a little bit ahead, but today with the WWE, if you don't work for them, you don't work.
Yep, right, yeah.
I mean, you can work for some little tiny indie, a little independent promotion where you make $10 or $15 a night
yeah.
wrestling, but you don't make any money.
Right. Yep.
So Larry stayed close to home, and it became natural that first of all, he was trained for pro wrestling by both Vern Gagne and Joe Pazendak. Have you ever heard the name Joe Pazendak?
Well, yeah. I mean, when I spoke with Larry, he mentioned, that was one of his first trainers. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep. So Joe Pazendak, who was, again, a real deal, he was a guy that could really, if he wanted to hurt you in the ring, he could hurt you in the ring.
Yeah.
And he and Vern were responsible. But now Joe was older than Vern, and Joe retired from the business, much earlier. Mm-hmm. And it just became natural in the 60s where you had the hometown boy Vern Gagne and you had Larry Hennig. Larry was bigger than Vern, size-wise.
Yeah.
And, I mean, let's be honest, Larry wasn't the wrestler that Vern was. Mm-hmm. Vern had all that amateur background, and Vern could really wrestle an opponent. Something he stressed for his promotion, I would point out, that he always wanted wrestlers first, characters second.
Sure, yeah.
So if you look back at the from the mid '50s all the way through the AWA history, you always had wrestlers on the cards. Yes, he had his characters too, but he wanted wrestling first.
Yeah.
And so Larry, it became natural around 1963 where they started this feud between Vern and Larry, the student versus the teacher. And the teacher, is going to teach the student that he hasn't showed him everything. And the student's going to show the teacher that, I can kick your behind. It just was a natural feud.
Yeah.
And it drew so well over the years. And, Hennig would be the bully and Vern would be the voice of reason. That's the way it was played out.
Right.
Now, I will tell you, and I bet you Larry told you this too, because he's quick to share it. Behind the scenes, and fans didn't realize that behind the scenes, Larry and Vern really had legitimate heat with each other.
Right, yeah.
For whatever the reasons. But Larry is one of the, and I love this guy to death, but I will tell you that Larry is one of the guys that I say, if he legitimately had a beef with Vern, he could have went to any territory in the country at the time, and there were 25 or 30 of them running, and he could have been a big star. But Larry didn't want to travel. Again, it goes back to being the good family guy. He didn't want to travel his family around. He didn't want to be away from his family.
Right.
So that's a credit to the man.
Yeah.
And I applaud him for it. But he is quick to kick Vern to the curb every time that, Vern was the promoter and Vern did this and Vern did that.
Right.
The reality is, Vern, to his credit, and I'm playing both sides here now, Vern, to his credit, always kept Larry in the main events. You can go through the 60s and into the 70s, and Larry Hennig is main eventing.
Right.
Now, this is a two-edged sword because Vern obviously used Larry because he knew Larry could draw. Larry always had main event pay and on top. So despite the fact that behind the curtains they legitimately had some issues with one another, Larry was never buried by Vern in the matches.
Yeah, right.
And that's not always the case.
Yeah.
A lot of times if a promoter doesn't like a wrestler, he puts him in the opener and has him lose and gives him the hint that I don't want to use you, or he just doesn't book him anymore.
Right, yeah.
That would work that way in that era.
Yep.
And that never happened with Larry. So they're both very unique individuals. And Larry is. I was at Cauliflower Alley in 2016. We did an AWA question and answer session, and I hosted it with Greg Gagne, Jim Brunzell, and Larry Hennig at the table with me. and the fans would ask questions and direct them to the various wrestlers. And it was so funny because there was one question directed at Larry, and he started in on Vern Gagne. And Greg Gagne sitting next to Larry, he's just kind of chuckled and he pats Larry on the back and he goes, "You and my father, what is it with you guys?" That's the truth. That's exactly the way he did it. Like he just kind of patted him on the shoulder and said, "What is it with you guys?"
Yeah.
So, but Larry would do that. And so part of it was real. I mean, there was legitimate hostility, but of course they were in business together as well.
Yeah, sure. All right, and now we're joined with Mick Karch, longtime voice of Minnesota wrestling, AWA broadcaster. Mick, now I want to ask you about a specific wrestler.
Sure.
I had an interview that I did with Larry Hennig, and I'd like to know your remembrances and memories of Larry Hennig, both as a fan and maybe your interactions with him over the years, and how important he is to just professional wrestling as a whole, but especially there in the Minnesota area.
I think Larry's impact and contributions to the AWA are immeasurable. People talk about Vern, they talk about Crusher, they talk about Nick, but Larry Hennig, from like 1961, 1962, all the way through the late 1980s, was almost a constant. And if he wasn't headlining the shows, he was at or near the top of the shows. He would leave the area once in a while, but he always came back. And I think if you've got a Mount Rushmore of AWA guys, I think Larry is right near the top. He was so successful, Dave. Not only, he started his career as a babyface, then he transitioned to heel, and then in the 1970s he turned back to babyface. Mm-hmm. But he's legendary. He is just, his matches were stellar. The feuds that he and Harley Race had with Crusher and Bruiser, for example, and then in later years when he turned babyface and he would wrestle against Bockwinkel and Stevens or what have you, Larry is a superstar, and I can't say enough good things about the guy. The consummate professional, another guy that I developed a real strong friendship and relationship with over the years, and Larry has been very vocal in his praise of what I do, which I am humbled by. But I don't think you can overemphasize just how big a part Larry Hennig plays in the AWA history.
Yeah, I definitely wish there was more footage of Race and Hennig, that tag team, because it's something. I hate things like that might get lost in the generations because there's not that video footage, but that is something that I definitely wish fans now could see. And I think you recently shared on Facebook a clip that I'd seen it many, many times, but it brought back all these memories of how wonderful it was. Is like you mentioned when Larry turned face again, when he came out and saved the High Flyers, and it was a remarkable just to hear that crowd and that reaction. Were you in that area at that time? Were you around? Or?
I was sitting front row.
Yeah. So what was that
front
like?
row at the TV? Larry was one of those guys, like a Mad Dog Vachon or a Crusher or a Nick, where they're so hated for so long in an area, but they grow on the fans.
Yeah.
And when they finally make that babyface transition or do an angle, it's like the people were just waiting, to explode and to cheer Larry. That was it was beyond belief. That was one of the greatest angles that the AWA had ever set up, and and what's funny about that, just prior to that, Larry had been feuding with the High Flyers, and as a matter of fact, they had done an angle where if he didn't beat, I believe it was Greg Gagne within 10 minutes. This is back in the days where streaking was a big deal.
Yeah.
Larry said that he would streak out of Nicollet Mall in downtown Minneapolis if he didn't beat Greg Gagne in 10 minutes. Well, he didn't beat him, and he wound up streaking. He had his tights on, thank God. He had his wrestling tights and knee pads. Otherwise, that would have been a real sight.
Yeah.
But just prior to that, they have this with Larry as a heel in this angle, and then all of a sudden he turns babyface. And just remarkable. I was going to mention one thing that you alluded to about the Hennig and Race tapes. What's so sad about that is that Vern would tape over the existing tapes every week.
Yeah.
To save money. You don't have the foresight to save the stuff for future generations or what have you.
Yeah.
So all the Larry Hennig and Harley Race against Dick the Bruiser and the Crusher, what have you, it's non-existent. It's gone. And that's tragic.
Yeah, it is.
Because that was Larry's heyday.
Yeah. Yeah, I hate when I understand the concept, of reusing the tape. I mean, who would have thought that this stuff would have ever been worth anything, the money
exactly.
it would be worth now. Or, I mean, there wasn't even reruns and stuff on those days. So they never thought that it would, have to be aired again. But it's the footage loss is just, it crushes me.
Yeah, it's killer. I get that.
Fans, November 17th at the Wicked Wort Brewery in Robbinsdale, Minnesota. Come meet Larry the Axe Hennig and taste his new beer, The Axe is Back. You do not want to miss this event. Your chance to show support and meet Larry Hennig at the Wicked Wort Brewery in Robbinsdale, Minnesota. Visit MinnesotaWrestlingHallOfFame.com for more information. If you can be in the Robbinsdale, Minnesota area on Saturday, November 17th from 3 to 7 p.m., then come out and visit Larry Hennig and try the new beer, The Axe is Back. Wicked Wort Brewery, Robbinsdale, Minnesota. And there you have it, another episode of the Dave Dynasty Show in the book. Thank you for joining us this week for this spectacular episode dedicated to Larry the Axe Hennig. Remember, if you are in the Robbinsdale, Minnesota area on November 17th, go visit Larry, try his new beer, The Axe is Back, the Wicked Wort Brewery there in Robbinsdale, Minnesota. Special thanks to Carol Castle, George Schire, and Mick Karch for coming on today, talking with us about Minnesota wrestling, the AWA, and particularly Larry Hennig. Very, very special thanks to Larry the Axe Hennig for joining us. It was truly an honor to speak with such a legendary name in professional wrestling history. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure you visit DaveDynasty.com for all of our links to everything. Social media is all there. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, it is all there. Make sure you visit our ProWrestlingTees.com store. Buy a t-shirt, support the show, and keep it for free. That's what we do every week. We bring it to you for free. Continue to support us so that we can do that. Wherever you follow us on social media and whatever means you listen to us, please like, share, comment, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. We appreciate your support. We're going to get out of here. And until next week, I am Dave Dynasty. This is the Dave Dynasty Show. And until next time, be good, be safe, and keep on growing.